What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about how to make bullet hit effects inside of Davinci Resolve using the Fusion page. Now let's take a look at the effect that we are going to be creating. So as you can see, that is a really cool effect, and it's all made possible due to Production Crate's high quality VFX assets. We'll talk more about them later in the video. So to begin, we're going to divide this video into 3 different sections. The first one is going to be tracking. After that, it's going to be masking, and then finally adding the bullet hit effects. So let's start with the first one, tracking. This one is largely dependent on your shot, but I'm going to do my best to generalize everything so it'll apply to your shot as well. So on the Fusion page, we need to first set the region that we want to track. Tracking takes a lot of processing power, so we only want to track the area that we absolutely need to. If we take a look at my shot, you can see we start over on the front window, then we go to a side one, and then finally we get to the back window. Now we only want to track the back window because we don't need anything before that. So I'm going to set my in point at frame 135. Just grab this yellow marker on the side and put it right on that frame. Then I'm going to go forward to my clip and just look for when the window fully exits the frame. So at frame 159 we can end the track. So if I just drag this like so, the last frame it's going to track is frame 159. Now that we have the track region, we need to tell Fusion what points in the scene to track. So let's do shift space and add in the tracker node. It'll add this tracking point, and we can move it around with this little dongle on the side here, and we want to just center it on the point that we want to track. The box with the solid outline is going to be the object it's going to be tracking. So if we have some of the background selected and the windshield wiper, those 2 objects are at different spaces in the scene. So it's going to be trying to track both of them at the same time. You're going to get some really weird results. So we only want to have the object that we're tracking selected. And then the next one is the one with the dashed outline. And this is going to be the area that Fusion is going to search for the object that we want to track. If your scene has a lot of motion, you want to make this bigger. But if there's not a ton of motion, you want to make it as small as you can. So I'm going to make mine right around that size for right now. Now in every track like this, I recommend at least 4 tracking points. Ideally, you'll put them in each one of the corners like I did in my screen tracking video. But in this shot, that's not really a great option. So I'm going to add 3 more points and just position them around the shot as far away as I can. Alright, so this is where I'm going to leave all the trackers, and you can kind of see I did that same thing. I wanted to get one top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, and so on. That's kind of what you want to do to get the most accurate possible track. Now to actually track the scene, we're going to go up to the adaptive mode and set this to be best match. Then we're also going to bring the match tolerance down so that we get a more accurate track. Now to actually track it, simply press the track forward button and let Fusion do its thing. And once it's done, we can go through and review the track to see how good of a job it actually did. And you can see some of the points, especially this one is jumping around up here when the object it's trying to track leaves the screen. And especially once we get all this motion blur, the track just kind of falls apart. So what we need to do is help Fusion and kind of guesstimate where all those points are going to be, especially when they go off screen. So let's pick a tracking point and then zoom in and just keep going through until you see it mess up the track. So right there it's good, but the next frame it is not. So what we're going to do is grab this tracking point and then position it where we think that point actually is. So right around here is going to be pretty good. And now we just have to go through the rest of the clip and make sure that those points line up to the spot that we think that the original point is. Alright, now if we scrub through here, you see it's doing a pretty good job staying roughly in the right spot. Now that we have all the points actually tracked, we need to tell Fusion what to do with all this information. So let's add in a transform node, and I'm going to put a text node into it for right now just so we can kind of see what we're doing. If we merge all that up, we can come into the transform node, right click on the center X and Y, connect to tracker 1 and make sure you do unsteady position. Now this will apply the motion that Fusion gathered from all those trackers and make it so that the text in this case follows the X and Y motion of the scene. Now it looks a little strange at first, and that's because we also need to apply the size and the rotation. So let's right click on the side, connect it to tracker 1 unsteady size, and then do the same thing with the angle. And now just by adding those things, we have a lot better of a track. So now that we've got the tracking done, let's move on to masking. If you take a look at the shot, eventually the seats in the back here are going to come up and cover the window. So we need to make sure that that's masked out so that it can overlay on top of the window and hide the bullet hit effects. To do this, I'm going to be using the Magic Mask tool. Now that tool is only available in the studio version of Davinci Resolve. So if you do not have that, you'll have to use a polygon node and just mask out the window and animate it through so that way you have a cutout of the window that you can use as a mask. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to be using the Magic Mask tool. So let's go ahead and add that in down here and connect the media in one directly to the Magic Mask. Now, I like to have it set up so I have my original media off in the left viewer. And I also like to have my Magic Mask in the second viewer so I can see the original and I can see the output. So I'm going to go ahead and draw around the interior of the car, and you can see it got the bottom part pretty good. but we also need to select this top part right up here. And that's why I like to have both visible. And as you can see right down here, grab some of the windshield wiper as well as the background. So I'm just going to hold down the Alt key and draw over it, and it's going to remove that indicated by the red line. And once that's done, I'm going to head up to the controls here, and I'm going to hit track forward. And it's going to use those same in and out markers that we set before. Alright, and once that's done, we can kind of go through here, and you see eventually it's going to mess up right up at the top, right about there. And now we can just use the tool and we can select that area and just refine the mask. I'm also going to take away a little bit right down there. And anytime we change anything, we need to track it forward again so it keeps all that updated information. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the track forward button. And it messed up again, so I'm just going to go through and keep refining it until we have a good track. And once that's looking good, one more thing that we want to do is kind of soften the edge of this mask here. So if we go into Magic Mask, come down to Matte, and then just bring up the blur. It's going to soften the edge out, and that's going to make it look a lot more seamless, especially in the spots that there was a lot of movement. So once we've done that, let's view the media out, and we're going to apply the Magic Mask as a mask into the Merge 1 node. Now, as you can see, the text disappears. So if we go to the Merge 1, we just need to invert the mask, and now we can see it again. Now that we've finished the tracking and the masking, let's move on to adding the bullet hit effects. Like mentioned before, I'm going to be using Production Crate for all of my VFX elements. They have been my site of choice for almost 3 years now, and I can confidently say they have the best collection of VFX elements out there. On top of that, they have always had really affordable pricing, even including a monthly tier now. Plus, there's even a free account that you can sign up for. So check out the first link in the description down below to unlock your ever-growing library of already over 10,000 VFX assets. But now that we have our VFX assets, let's add them inside of Davinci Resolve. If I open my media pool, I have a folder with some bullet hit effects as well as some like glass shatter textures. So the first thing that we actually need to do is set up our scene. So I'm going to delete the text 1 node, and then I'm going to add in a background node and connect that into the transform. Inside the background node, I'll just set the alpha to be 0. So that way it's completely transparent and pretty much just making a blank slate that we can do anything with. Now, the reason this is important is because we need to set the resolution so the resolution going into the transform node matches the resolution from the media in. So if you view the media in, you can see this is 4K, and the background node is also 4K. The reason that this is so important is we track the clip in 4K resolution. And if we take a clip that's say 1080p and try and apply a 4K track to it, we're going to get some weird effects. So adding that background node just to make sure that the resolution matches is a really good practice to get into. But now that we've done that, we can add in our bullet hit effects and just merge them up after the background node, and it's going to keep that resolution. So after the bullet hit effect has been added, let's go ahead and do shift space and add in a time speed node and a transform node. Inside the time speed node, we're going to set a delay of 140. And whatever you put in the delay, that's going to be the frame that the bullet hit effect is going to start. So if I go to frame 149, it's not visible, but if I go forward 1 frame, you can see the bullet hit effect. Then we're going to use the transform node to kind of scale it down and position it on the glass. And if you play it, you can see it already has the motion because it's going through that transform node. I'm going to add the other 2 bullet hit effects and just offset the time by a couple of frames. Alright, and now that I've added those, to add some more impact to these bullet hit effects, we want to add the glass texture so more of the window gets shattered. So I'm going to drag down the texture I want to use and just merge it up after the background node. And one thing I noticed right away is this texture is in 8K, and to make it a little bit easier for Fusion to handle, I'm going to add in a resize node after that node. By default, it brings it down to 4K, but I'm actually going to do keep frame aspect and bring it down to 2200, just what's a little bit smaller and easier for Fusion to handle. Then after the resize node, I'm going to add a time speed node and a transform. In the time speed node, I'm going to select the same delay as I did the first bullet hit effect, which is 140, and then I'm going to move to that frame. Inside the transform node, I'm just going to move around the position of this glass shatter effect, and then just position it where I want it to appear. And now I'm going to copy this transform node, and then I'm going to take the output of the time speed and put that into this node again. And I'm just going to use that same texture and just move it around a little bit, place it in a new area so that it shatters more of the glass. Now I'm going to use the same shatter effect for all of the bullet hit effects, just because it looks really good, and if I rotate it around and change the size, you're not going to be able to tell that it's duplicated. To do that, I'm going to add in another time speed node and take the output of the resize, and then in this time speed node, I'll put in the delay of the second bullet hit effect. After I merge this up, I'll be able to position the second one off on the side here. And then just like the last time, I'm going to make another copy of it just with another transform node. And then finally, I will repeat that all one more time for the third and final bullet hit effect. And now that that's done, we just need to do a couple more refinements to make everything blend together and look more realistic in the end. The first thing that we're going to do is just drag this section up here and then merge the background node up after this last merge. And we want the background node to be coming in as the background input, so let's just do Control T to switch that around. Now what we can do with this is just take the blend control, and then we can bring this down, and it's going to change the opacity of all of these bullet hit effects at once. So I'm going to set it to be right around here just to make it a little bit more subtle and just make it blend in a little bit nicer. Once that's done, I'm going to come after this transform node right down here, and I'm going to do Shift Space and add in a brightness and contrast node. Now with this node, I'm going to play around with the gain and gamma settings until I get something that I think looks a little bit nicer. So there's two more things that we can add to this. The first one is if you look at the inside of the car here, it's all out of focus, and even the windshield wiper is. So that means that window is not in focus. Because all these the glass shatter effects are in focus, it looks a little bit weird. After the brightness and contrast, I'm going to add in a lens blur node. And then I'm going to bring the blur size down just a little bit, so that way it'll kind of match the amount of blur that's on the windshield wiper down there. And then finally, you don't want to turn this one on until the very end because it takes a lot of processing power. But if we go into the Transform 1 node, we can go over to Settings and then check Motion Blur, and then we'll want to bring the quality up to 8 to 10. And this one thing alone is going to make everything blend and look so much more natural. But once that's done, you can head back to the edit page, add your music and sound effects, which you can also get on productioncrate.com, and you have your final effect. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this one right here. This is kind of part 1 on how to make an actual muzzle flash and make it look really realistic. If you can combine these two effects together in the same shot, you can make some really cool scenes. And make sure to check out Production Crate down in the description so you have the right VFX assets for both jobs. But with all that being said, I'll see you guys in another video.